Yo, I've been hearing a lot of trash talk about unions, saying these ain't the friends to be choosing, out for themselves, not for others. You might have heard unions ain't good for your health, brother. Well, let me spit it for you, got something to say. It's because of unions, we got an 8-hour workday. This ain't no commercial break, my friend. Unions are the peeps who brought you the weekend. Probably never think about it, la-di-da-di. Unions fought hard for your right to party. They're out there to ease your tension with decent wages, healthcare, and pensions. Now it's like unions blamed for bad weather. But tell me what's wrong with solidarity forever. I want to shout it on high, get it off my chest. The story here is fighting for those who have less. So when unions are bad guys in the propaganda war, think what they've done, where they stand, who they fight for.
Hi, everyone. So I'm here with Lindell Smith. He's the councillor for District 8. He was first elected in 2016, and now he's running for re-election. And so my name is Suzanne MacNeil. I'm president of the Halifax, Dartmouth, and District Labour Council. We're made up of about 25,000 unionized workers all around the municipality in different unions and in different sectors of the economy. And Lindell is one of the 13 candidates for council that we endorsed for this upcoming election. And Lindell, how are you doing today?
I'm great, and I appreciate, this would be the second time that I've thankfully been able to be endorsed by you. So I appreciate the continued support for sure.
Well, I should let you know, Lindell, and I should let folks out there know too that one of the big reasons that we're endorsing you again is the process that you led in getting Halifax to adopt a living wage policy for its suppliers and making that a requirement for suppliers. And so for folks who aren't quite as familiar with the issue, I'm wondering if you talk a little bit about that policy, the process it took to get here, and
Right.
And what it means for this community.
Oh, thank you. It was a long road. So 2016 is when I first was elected. This is my, hopefully, knock on wood, if the residents, if I get the resident support, it'll be my second term. But 2016 is when I put the motion forward for us to explore becoming a living wage city. You know, if I wasn't such a rookie at the time, I would have asked us to actually become a living wage employer alongside with our procurement, but you learn as you go. And that's what we're going to be exploring in the future of how, as a city, we become a living wage employer. And, I hope that includes term and contract and other folks, but that's another battle we'll save for the next time if I get back. But really it started really because when I ran, I was talking more and more to labor folks and folks who had positions of what living wage meant, because I grew up on Goddard Street in social housing, and a living wage wasn't something that was top of mind. It was more of what is survival. You survive, and that's what you're used to, so you do it. But I didn't know until getting into council, or trying to get into council, having discussions with folks, that there's actually policies in place to help people who are on those lines, and a living wage is one of them. And it was working with all of the, I don't want to single out one single person, but or group, but working with a lot of folks who said this is something that council should do. And when I got into council, understanding that we could look into it, I made a motion, and 4 years later, it happened. But even between that, we had the employment systems review, which was a review that happened years ago before I got on council, that was talking about racism within HRP, HRM. And that also spoke about employers, mostly Black, from the Black community, who were being passed up on jobs. And when I was talking to our labor union within HRM and staff, one of the things that was also brought up is, we need to make sure that our contractors and our seasonal employees are being paid a living wage. And the more and more I had these discussions with the staff and labor unions and whatnot, I realized that this is something that is a necessity. So I didn't give up. There was one time where it came to council that staff and council wasn't too sure if we should follow through with it, because my first motion also included buy local. And at that time, buy local wasn't adopted because there wasn't any definition for buy local at the time. But the other aspect was, when it first came, this is going to cost a lot of money. Are you sure you want us to go forward? And, when you're in the system of government, sometimes you can be convinced that, yeah, maybe it isn't the best idea. But no, it had to happen. It was a necessity. And that only lasted for like 0.3 seconds. And then, kept pushing forward. And, we're to a point where we'll see what the future holds. And it's really going to take groups and staff and our labor unions to make sure that we don't drop the ball on this. Because what I said to you when we spoke, Suzanne, was I'm fearful that a living wage will be blamed for everything now, because we know it's going to cost us more, but it's not going to cost us as much as people would like us to believe. And a living wage is going to be blamed for, well, we can't do these type of contracts because a living wage is going to cost us more. And I just need more people to help, not only the new council that comes in, but also our current bureaucrats understand that a living wage doesn't all of a sudden make our city unaffordable, and it doesn't all of a sudden make business unable to operate. It actually makes business better. It makes our city better. And if you pay employees living wage, they're happier, they stay, they do better work, and we know that.
Absolutely. Yeah. Like when people have money in their pockets and they're able to live and afford a decent life, it absolutely makes our community stronger.
Right.
And Lindell, I want you to know that when your motion passed a couple weeks ago, I got calls from, my colleagues and my fellow union activists across the country saying, wow, how did you guys do this in Halifax? And this is amazing. And we're going to see if we can get something similar enacted in our own cities and communities. And one of the things that kind of surprised me in the conversations that I was having with some folks across the country is that the living wage calculation for our city is actually not that much different from a lot of bigger cities. So like what it costs to have a decent standard of life in Vancouver or even Toronto, and there are lots of communities in Ontario, bigger cities than Halifax, that actually have a lower living wage calculation. And so,
right.
Thinking about, yourself as a councillor, and the constituents you represent, I was wondering if you have like any thoughts about this, or what this means for the people that you're representing.
Yeah, it goes back to that story of, I call Halifax a little big city, because we're still, our population is just over 400, and we are seeing big city development. You go downtown, you're seeing towers and cranes everywhere. You're seeing more folks coming from all over. Our universities are, taking out COVID, universities are busting at the seams, and more people are staying here. But you still, across the line, you still have our social housing communities like Margaret Park, Uniacke Square, there's Westwood, where people are living on the border line, or in most cases living in poverty. And as a city, when you see that we're growing, our GDP is growing, lots of our units, apartment buildings are being built, people are getting better jobs, the industry wage is going up. But we're also seeing that we were the only province as Nova Scotia to have child poverty rates go up. So most places in Canada were either the same or going down, where Nova Scotia, our child poverty rates were going up. So that alone tells you that whatever is happening here is a case where I think government needs to step in, because we know that private industry is not going to deal with affordable housing. They're not going to deal with lowering the poverty rates. It's really going to take government to regulate us to be in that supportive place. And too much as a province, and gonna point at the problems a little bit. We allow too much privatization. Gosh, I can't speak of everything, and which it causes us to be in the place that we're in today. Like, it's unfortunate that we allow that, and hopefully new leadership might change how we view how we operate as a province. But as a city, we've done okay with trying to keep everything here, but at the same time, we haven't done, and that's why a living wage policy was important, but also a social policy lens and a framework was also important to me. And I brought that forward because as we move forward as a city and we grow, it's easy to forget about the people. We always remember the taxpayers, like everyone who pays taxes. It's easy to remember them, but there are people who might not own a home. There are new families, new immigrants, international students, permanent residents who can't vote, who get forgotten because they are not the ones that are paying taxes. They're not the ones that can vote. And if we grow, it's easy for us to leave all those marginalized groups or groups who are most vulnerable behind. So we need to set ourselves up for the future. And I hope that with the social policy, which create the social value within procurement, which also is going to create social policy framework within HRM in general, that would just give us more of a, how does this affect people, not how does this affect taxpayers, because that has been the conversation for a long time.
No, exactly. And that's something that we're really interested in seeing move forward, because we at the Labor Council know that just because there's growth, just because there's economic activity, doesn't mean that everybody is benefiting from that.
Right.
And so now to change the topic slightly, you're running for a second term here, and a lot has happened in the 4 years since you were first elected as a rookie councillor. And I'm wondering if you have any sort of reflections to share on like some big moments, some lessons learned, like what were some important issues over the last 4 years that you're thinking of and want to share with folks?
Initially, so one of the things that I did really early on, even when I wasn't sure I wanted to do this. So when I was approached to run, when I finally decided that I was going to follow through with it, it was more of a statement at the beginning. It was more of like, look, I'm from Goddard Street. My family's from North Preston. I'm 26 years old, or 25 when I was running. Got a young daughter, no political experience. Everyone that was on my team was all new to politics. Like, let's show that anyone can do this. But as, very quickly realized that, oh my goodness, this is real. People are excited, but also, that you can't run off of, hey, I'm different. You should vote for me. It's more of like, what are you going to do to deal with the issues? Like, what are you going to bring to the table that's going to solve problems? And then that's when it kind of got real, because you have to think like, what are your skills? How are your skills going to allow us to either change how we operate as a city or make it better? And then, so reflecting, I had to think, well, what is my experiences? What do I bring to the table? And really what it come down to is understanding like the social impacts of everything that happens as a community. So like, not growing up with a lot of money, growing up in a community that's already marginalized, growing up in, as a young Black man who's been, racism has happened to me. And, even with my young daughter, she's dealt with unfortunate events as a young kid, with racism. So, those things most elected officials don't experience, because we know that, we don't have many women, we don't have many people of color in our making decisions. So reflecting on that, all those things, it was like, okay, now that I'm here, how do I put that into effect? And it was the things we talked about earlier that allowed that, but also, there were times where colleagues would call me or message me and said, you know what, I never thought about it that way. Like, your perspective actually made me change my mind, because I didn't realize that was happening to people. And I was speaking from a point of, this is my experience, not truly understanding that my experience might help someone change their state of mind. So that was something that really allowed me to be more upfront with my experience in sharing that, because I've never been in a place where my story could affect a decision, a broad decision. I've told my story many times in many places, but not to a place where, like, if I tell a story the next moment, that could change how people's lives would be affected. So that was something that I still, to this day, very honor much. But, the other spectrum of it, not as like tear jerking, is the amount of stuff that we deal with as a council. Like I wish that I could have done better at trying to be more, able to answer all the emails, the hundreds of emails that we get a day, all the phone calls we get, all the resident meetings, all the, potlucks and turkey dinners. Those are the things that, and I went to as much as I could, because I also got a family and want to not make my whole life a political story, but I'm in that world, so I gotta come to terms with it. But that's one thing that if I get back in again, it's now that I know how that works. Now I understand how to manage time better. Just how that world works. That's something that I hope as a reflecting piece to be more present on, trying to just be as accessible as possible. And I feel I'm already accessible, but it's a large district, 20,000 people, many different groups, from seniors all the way to new families to students. So there's a lot of different things you have to keep into account.
Yeah, so a big learning curve as a rookie councillor,
yeah.
but you still got some important things done, thinking about that living wage motion.
Right.
So now, thinking to the future now, you've got the experience under your belt, and you've been learning a few things about balancing sort of the business of council, serving your constituents, and being there in the community. What are some things, Lindell, that you want to see in the future for the next 4 years, if you get reelected?
So the easy one is to follow through with the commitments that we've made when it comes to living wage and social policy. So just making sure that doesn't get lost in the shuffle and doesn't become a piece of paper, where it actually is affecting people's lives. But also, I really hope that we get to a place as a city where we become more involved with affordable housing and affordability in general. And we're getting close. Like the last council really made a point to tell the province and other partners that this is a priority of ours, through center plan, through development. I don't know the last time that at my committee, Halifax West Community Council, this is the committee that gets to see development applications before it goes to council. Almost every application that has come to that committee, somebody has asked about affordable housing and what the plan is. So we can't mandate it, but there are still councillors who are asking, well, what are you going to do to address it? So, we're in a place where we just, before the election, we made a affordable housing fund that we're going to be collecting from any new developments. It'd be great if the units could be on the property itself, but we can't mandate that yet. So that's the next step, is us getting the province to allow us to make that a requirement. And really also looking at the rent caps or within the province. That we know that they're not supportive of it. With change of leadership, that might change. So those are the things that I'm excited about to work more on, but also to just be able to support the residents of the district in District 8, which is a beautiful and welcoming district. So continue to do that work and support organizations and people in it.
Good. Yeah. And so we're on the countdown to election day now. I think it's October 17th. So what does the next few days look like for you now?
So a lot of today, well, I guess, are we Tony's editing this. So are we saying today, like, do people know that this is being recorded?
Yeah, people know this is being recorded.
Okay, all right, cool.
Yeah.
So today is the last day of e-voting. So today is just about getting online, people engaged, checking in with folks, making sure that they cast their vote online if they could. And then from Thursday until Saturday, it's going to be out and around. So every once in a while, not every once in a while, but every day, I at least am visiting one or two residents who call or I see on the street and they just want to chat because we're not knocking on doors because of COVID. But making, if somebody calls and say, hey, I want you to come tell me why I should vote for you, you're making that a priority and going to see them. Also just being out in places, kind of impromptu, not really advertising it, but just being there. So, going to the busy areas, talking to folks, hearing what their concerns are, keeping social distance as required and whatnot. And that's really leading up to E-Day. It's just going to be out, interacting, following up with residents. But what's different is I still, even leading up, I still got my council duties. So I'm still getting emails, I'm still getting phone calls. So trying to balance those two has been the most difficult of the election, alongside all the other election related things. Like, first time I had my name written on a wall in a negative way. So I guess I made it. So I made it. So, dealing with what happens during election, the people wanting to not have you reelected. So, dealing with that, but also as the current councillor, just doing my duty. Because it's not like other levels of government where you are not the elected official. I'm still the councillor. I'm still the one that if you have an issue, you call.
Yeah. Now, as we kind of wrap up this conversation, I'm wondering if there's anything else that you would like, the voters of District 8 to know, or also, the different union members that have been working across the municipality to elect progressive candidates.
Right.
Yeah.
So in terms of the community within the union and labor world, continue to keep fighting the good fights as you've been doing for many years before I been put on this earth. So, I always am grateful for that work that's being done, fighting for workers' rights, fighting for people's rights, fighting for treaty rights. Continue to do that. In particular, to me, it's the same thing. Our local unions, our provincial unions is know that I am an ally, and if I can support the work in some way, I will definitely do it. To the voters, I'm asking for a second term. I will continue to push for what I've done and only to do better. And the 3 pillars: responsible growth, social equity, and affordability. I just want to continue to do this work, and with that support, I hope that we can do that. And whatever the outcome is, I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity, and no matter what, I'll still be doing that work in some fashion.
Great. Well, getting your motion on the living wage passed was a really important moment for us, and we're definitely excited to keep continuing the work to get a full living wage ordinance and a number of other very progressive, important social policy pieces passed. So thanks so much, Lindell, for taking the time to have this conversation with me, and good luck on the campaign trail for the next few days until Election Day. And we'll be out in the community advocating and working to get our candidates elected. So thanks so much, Lindell, and we'll be talking soon.
All right, appreciate it. Thank you. Bye.
All right.